Hello and welcome to this fourth webinar in the Crypto Adoption Week, where we have presented the findings, the results from the Crypto Adoption Survey done by Ernst & Young and K33. On Monday, we had a webinar for Sweden. On Tuesday, we had a webinar for Denmark. Yesterday, we had a webinar for Finland. And today we have two agendas because we will present the Norwegian's results and the Nordic summary. And as many people may know, the Norwegian results or survey has been done for several years, so then we can also compare with some earlier results. Today, the presentation of the survey will be done by Anders Helseth from K33 and Mads Ribe from Ernst & Young. But in a little later in this show, we will welcome guests from the whole industry in Norway. And we also have a representative from Nordic Blockchain Association. So be a part of this because we will have a great presentation and a great discussion later on. And especially for the Norwegian viewers, be also beware that we on 11 o'clock today have a special tax webinar where we are also joined by two people from the Norwegian tax authorities, and also from Ernst & Young and from Crypto.second. So there we will shed light on a lot of the questions that people are struggling with regarding the tax report, where the deadline is in the end of this month. So then I think we are good to go. So maybe I could just then welcome Anders, welcome Jakob on stage first. Jakob Mikkel Hansen, he is the leader of the Nordic Blockchain Association, which has a headquarter in Denmark, but also include the other Nordic countries. And the Nordic Blockchain Association is also a partner of this Crypto Adoption Week and has also been represented in the other webinars. Maybe you could then shortly present yourself, Jakob, and also then continue with explaining what is Nordic Blockchain Association.
Yeah, thank you very much, Morten, for having us. To go into Nordic Blockchain Association, we are a non-profit organization established back in 2017. We've been working with the mission and vision on driving adoption for blockchain for a brighter future. We have various amount of different profiles within the organization. It's everything from entrepreneurs, startups, corporation, political organizations. So we are trying to become the Nordic voice for blockchain technology in general. We do that by doing work for the industry. We have monthly meetups where we talk about different topics. We got a yearly conference, 2 days conference with 700 people attendees. We have done this now for 7 years, and now moving into a stage where doing partnerships like this would help us cross the borders to help and work on some of the important parts which crypto adoption have been facing historically. But as we see right now with the report, it's quite exciting. It's times we're heading into. My own background is as an auditor and a venture capital, primarily from outside of the Nordic region. And I think as well, a lot of things have changed over the last couple of years, which is quite exciting from a more professional standpoint of view. So really excited to be here. NBA is organization for the ecosystem. So just happy to be part of an initiative like this.
One additional question for you, Jakob. What importance is it that we now have a survey then for all the Nordic countries, and that we also can see the trends in each country and even overall on the Nordic level?
Oh, it's extremely important. It's extremely important. I think historically, I mean, I know Norway have done it for quite some time right now, but historically it's been hard to have some very clear numbers and some base numbers and benchmark we could actually use within the industry. And having this report where you take some, I wouldn't say simple, but at least easy to explain the key numbers like users, the age, gender, adoption, the years, and as well different platforms. This now gives us some numbers as an industry. Like 1.5 million is a lot of people, right? It gives us quite a good understanding which we as an industry let's say we kind of knew. We know there was a big adoption, but now it's easier for us, especially when you have Ernst & Young and K33, really established and well-known international brands providing a report like this. So I think for us, this gives a really good reference point. So I really urge everyone to use this report as a reference point when we're talking to not only blockchain or crypto native, but when we're talking to other people in other industries, because everyone can understand users, and 1.5 million users is a lot, right? Everyone can understand that this is the new people, the younger generation looking into something, and they're often right? Because they kind of understand and tend to ask a little bit. Older might be a little bit caught up in the past. So I think it gives really valuable things, and I really want to urge everyone to let's use these numbers cross regions, so we have a common language and a common denominator can be used as an ecosystem and as a whole. So I think it's extremely important, and I think it's extremely exciting, and this is just the start of a lot of other interesting topics and surveys we can do as an ecosystem, so we can help each other grow.
Thank you very much, then, Jakob. And then we can go on with the results or the findings, and then we can welcome Anders and Mads on stage. Maybe, Mads, you can present yourself first, who you are and what you represent.
Thank you, Morten. So my name is Mads Ribe, and I'm associate partner and leader in the digital law and AI team here at Ernst & Young in Norway. We are a quite broad set of specialists within the digital fintech crypto space from the legal side. We have been supporting this particular segment since 2016. So it's a really interesting space to be in, right? It's been many different types of waves that has gone through this market since then. For that reason, it's really cool to be able to present this survey. We have done this a couple of years now, but this is the first time we've done it in the Nordics. So it's quite great to be able to look at, okay, so the Norwegian survey for a couple of years, compare over the years, and then now compare to all of the Nordic markets.
And now over to you, Anders, and then you can just continue with the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Anders Helseth. I am the head of research at K33, formerly known as Arcane Crypto. We do three things at K33. We do crypto research, which is the department I'm working at. We run an automated brokerage, K33 Markets, with almost 300 pairs for crypto trading. And we run an investment fund, which we call K33 Assets, where the fund aims to and does beat Bitcoin. With that said, I think we can go on to the survey results. We are very eager to present the results for you this year. We have done it for the other Nordic countries the previous few days. For the Norwegian survey, we have asked a few more questions, so this survey is even more interesting in a sense in itself than the other countries, which are also interesting, of course. So how we will do it is we will first present the numbers for Norway, and then we will end off with an Nordic comparison, where we also then, of course, go through the results of the other countries. So without further ado, let's dive into the high-level results from the Norwegian survey. And this survey, EY and K33, we have done it for a few years, but the survey was conducted even before that, so we have a good time series here. We find that this year, 9% of all Norwegian adults own cryptocurrency. That equates to about 400,000 Norwegians. And we can see that the crypto ownership in Norway, if you look at it from a 5-year time frame, is increasing rapidly. The current ownership rate is slightly below what we had from the 2022 survey, but it is rising again after falling last year. And here we have the exact same numbers, just in terms of number of people instead of percentages. So you can see we peaked at 420,000 in early 2022. And we are almost back to that number now. at 395,000.
Now, looking at the age brackets, we see that it's really the younger generations leading the pack. So there was a significant decrease actually from 2022 to 2023 in the younger generation, but we really see they have now picked up on the crypto trend now for 2024 and is now really leading the pack among the different age brackets. There's also a significant amount of people in Norway between 30 to 39 who owns crypto, but that has actually slowly decreased since 2022. So that's quite interesting. We'll come back to the other Nordic results later on, but at least for Norway, we see that's really kind of the millennial generation that's leading the pack, while the 40 plus generation is quite stable. Now, compared to the amount of people in Norway owning stocks, there's actually more people below 40 who own crypto than stocks. So that's quite interesting. It's been that for many years now, and you saw last year it was quite similar. But for 2024, you see that the millennial generation has really made it an increase for crypto versus shares for those below 40. For the 40 plus generation, the amount of people owning stocks is still quite significant, right, compared to crypto ownership. And we actually see a small decrease in 2024, but it's quite stable. So it's really the younger generation owning crypto, and it's quite interesting to then see that trend, right, when it comes to stock versus crypto in terms of the age brackets.
Definitely. And if we are trying to be a bit sensationalist here, you can say that for all investment managers and people handling investments for others, you can see that we have the future to the left there and not the past, but perhaps the present to the right. So a more crypto interested crowd is coming to everyone, most likely. We're diving deeper into the demographics of crypto ownership in Norway. We find that there is a significant gender gap in that more men own crypto than women. Slightly above 25% of Norwegian crypto owners are women, which means there is about a 3-to-1 ratio of men to women in the crypto ownership. And as you can see, when we do it per gender in this chart, 14% of Norwegian men own crypto, whereas the same number for women is 5%. This gender gap is nothing unique for cryptocurrencies. Also, in other investment assets, we find the gender gap. For instance, stocks. The ratio is slightly less of men to women there, about a 2-to-1 instead of the 3-to-1 we have here. But in general, I would say we see the same gender gap as we observe for all types of investments. Gaming is a little bit relevant for crypto as well. So the gender gap is in the lines of expected, I would say, but still quite large. And there is no clear indication of the gender gap closing. Here we have the time series to the left of the ownership rate among men in Norway and women to the right. And we see that it largely follows the overall trend of when ownership is spiking. Everything went up in 2022, down in 2023, and up again in 2024. In relative terms, you can say that the ownership among women has increased more in the last year, but it's still 1 percentage point in both places. So I wouldn't interpret that as the gender gap is closing quickly. I think it's the best way to interpret this is that it is quite consistent, the gender gap, and has been so for many years.
But looking at then the invested amount, we see that a large proportion, right, more than 1/3, has invested less than 1,000 NOK. So that might correlate, right, to the millennial generation really driving the trend, perhaps not investing that high amounts, while those investing more than 50,000 NOK correlates to 14% of the ones that own crypto. So it's still driven by, let's say, smaller amounts, but at least that means that people are using crypto in terms of upskilling their own knowledge, right, about blockchain cryptocurrencies, which might then lead to a further trend going forward. Now looking at which types of crypto that people own, and obviously you can then you can choose. You have multiple choices here, right? So, but you see, Bitcoin is really leading the pack with 76%, and Ether a good second with 39%. So people are really investing in especially Bitcoin. But you also have some other coins that people believe in, and you see perhaps Solana, right, has been on a rising trend for the past year, is also on third place.
Yes, and as Mads alluded to there, the Bitcoin ownership has also gone up quite a lot in the last year, and it hits the pattern of ownership following the market trends, because 2023 was a really good year for Bitcoin in relative terms to most other cryptocurrencies, except for Solana, for instance, that Mads also mentioned, that when rising heavily, they also get a lot of new owners. This is a very interesting slide, if you ask me at least. Here we show the amount, in the chart, we show the amount, the percentage of everyone in Norway as to if they own NFTs or have used DeFi. And what we can see here is that the number of people that own NFTs has gone down slightly in the past year, from 2% of everyone owning NFTs in 2023, early 2023, to 1.6% now. This also very much is in line with the markets. NFTs were super popular a little bit after the survey was done in 2022, really. So the spring of 2022, a lot of people started dabbling with NFTs, and they heard stories of others earning a lot by investing in NFTs and so on. So I think it's, when seeing our results here and applying what we know from the real world, a lot of people bought NFTs in the spring of 2022. It's interesting, though, even the market has soured really in NFTs. Most still hold their NFTs, and also some obviously use them, for instance, for crypto gaming, where you can have NFTs as characters and different what we call skins, equipment to use in the game that you can actually own, not just think you own in the game. So that's cool. Looking at the number of DeFi users, that is slightly less than the number of NFT owners. Of all the ones that own crypto, 12% state that they also use DeFi or have used DeFi. DeFi, even though there are a lot more user-friendly interfaces coming and have been around for quite a while, decentralized finance, as it is short for, where you can do automatic trading on the blockchains without any trusted middleman, is still for quite advanced users, I would say, and the more crypto savvy. So as DeFi becomes more user-friendly and just more knowledge spreads about it, it will be very interesting to see if the rate of DeFi users as a percentage of crypto owners will increase in the coming years.
Absolutely, Anders, and maybe perhaps also especially with the younger generation now, you have that increase, right, with the millennial generation investing into crypto, and they might do it with smaller amounts, but with, to increase their knowledge. And so it's going to be interesting to follow that trend as well, right, in terms of whether they kind of expand into DeFi and the NFT world as well. Now, looking at this chart in terms of where Norwegians buy their crypto, we saw that for the other Nordic countries that it was kind of a diverse group, and they definitely see that for Norway as well. But for Norway, there's a significant one player dominating the market, which is Firi, having more than 1/3 of the market and actually increased market share compared to last year somewhat. While the other international exchanges still have a significant portion of the market, so Coinbase and Binance, which is so in the other Nordic countries as well, but they're not close to Firi, who is really dominating the market. Now we also see that 8% now also invested in the more securitized versions, right, such as ETFs, ETPs. This might be led by the recent BlackRock ETF, Bitcoin ETF, that was launched this year. But we have had securitized versions, right, in Europe for a couple of years, and we saw that especially for Sweden, who had their own ETP. We saw a significant part of the Swedes actually investing in those types of securitized versions. So it's interesting to see that also Norwegians now are moving into that particular space.
Yes, here we have asked all the crypto owners when they bought their first crypto. And what we can see here is that crypto really reached mainstream during COVID. And that fits with most people's feeling, I would guess. That some time after the corona outbreak, when the financial market started booming and people spent a lot of time at home in front of their computers, the digital world became more interesting also. So crypto was next in line for people both wanting to invest and explore kind of the new digital world. So that is a general pattern here, is that both that there's an underlying rising trend over time, I would say during this whole time frame, that it's more and more likely that new crypto owners, the number of new crypto owners are generally on a rising trend, but they also follow the market cycles to a certain degree. Because, for instance, you see there's a spike in 2018 here, and the crypto markets had a huge rally in late 2017, a little bit into 2018, depending on which coins you look at. And many bought their first coins after that. And then the number went back a little bit in 2019, and then the markets turned bullish again in 2020. And people have then become crypto owners since then. And we also see that a lot of Norwegians has bought crypto really in the last year, in the 2023 or 2024 here. That's more than 1 in 5 of the current crypto owners has bought in the last, let's say, 1.5 years, or 1.25 years. That was when people have bought historically, but we also check out the general sentiment also among non-crypto owners for how they view crypto in the future. And then we have asked the respondents whether they plan to buy crypto within the next 10 years. And when just asking that question, as simple as that, we find that a quarter, 24%, of all Norwegians, they plan to buy crypto in the next 10 years. And when do they plan to buy it? 6%, it's the left side chart here. 6% plan to buy it in the next year. a further 5% within the next 3 years, a further 5% within the next 5 years, and a further 8% within the next 10 years. So what this shows us is that we have a lot of people that don't own cryptocurrency currently. They do not plan to buy it in the immediate future, but they definitely think there is something interesting going on here. And as it matures and perhaps they mature or get more used to crypto, they plan to buy it in the future. So that is an interesting finding that us that work in the industry, we often feel like everyone knows everything and things are mature. But you see from this survey that a lot of people think this is something they should think about 5 to 10 years from now.
Now looking at whether or not Norwegians then report their crypto ownership in their taxes, I can maybe explain the graphics here. So the black is the amount of crypto owners in Norway. The blue one is those who then actually report their ownership in the taxes. While then the light blue graphic is then kind of the increase, right, as we see from the past couple of years of the number of Norwegian crypto owners who then actually report their taxes. So we definitely see there's an increase, but there's still only 14% of Norwegians who then say in this survey that they actually report their crypto ownership in the tax return. So if you remember the amount of invested, the invested amounts that people reported, we saw that it was about 14%, right? It was said they actually bought more than 50,000. They had invested more than 50,000 NOK. So it kind of correlates, the higher amounts correlates then with the amount of crypto owners who then actually report their ownership in the taxes, which means that, you know, the smaller amounts or at least below 50,000 NOK seems to make people not wanting to report it in the taxes, even though obviously all transactions and all ownership are supposed to be reported right in the tax return. So, but that's, I think it's a kind of interesting to see that correlation, 14%, right, above 50,000 NOK, and then 14% actually reporting in the taxes.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very interesting finding. And it also, I'm not saying that everyone that has a significant amount of crypto reports it, but just by doing the friend test, I would guess that many of my friends that own very little crypto, but some, I've never heard about them reporting it without, I won't say names, of course. So rounding off the Norwegian part of this survey, here's just a short summary of what we have presented so far. We have 400,000 Norwegian crypto owners, up 58,000 in the last year. There's a significant gender gap in crypto ownership, which mirrors other investment assets. Crypto owners are very young. 78% of Norwegian crypto owners are under 40. A little less than 1 in 5 of the crypto owners own NFTs, and that's a slight decline from the past year. And then in terms of which cryptos people own, most own Bitcoin and Ether. Now we have presented numbers for
so now going over.
Sorry, Mads, I'm supposed to give the word to you here.
Yeah. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, I was just about to say that we have presented numbers for the other Nordic countries the other days, and now it's then time for a comparison.
Exactly. So it's been a really interesting week, right? Because on Monday we presented the Swedish results, on Tuesday the Danish results, and then yesterday, Wednesday, we presented the Finnish results. So we're now going to go over to the joint comparison of the different Nordic results, which is then presented here for the first time. So looking at the ownership rate in the Nordics, we see, at least in percentage, we see that Norway is really leading the pack. There's quite similarities between Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, between 6 and 7%. But in terms of percentage to the population, it's really Norway who's leading. But obviously, in terms of number of people, the statistics are quite different. Because here we see actually Swedes, it's more Swedes that has invested in crypto than any other of the Nordic countries, obviously related to the number of people living in Sweden. But actually more than 550,000 people is estimated to own crypto in Sweden, while the same number for Norway is then 395 for 400,000-ish. Well, it's quite similar in Denmark and Finland, about 300,000. So that's quite interesting to see, right? That is quite a significant amount of people in each country, but in terms of number of people, it's really Sweden who's then the leading figure, as it in perhaps in other fintech areas as well.
Definitely. And in total, there is more than 1.5 million crypto owners in the Nordics. And the average for the entire Nordics is 7% ownership rate. The gender gap is prevalent all over the Nordics. The Norwegian numbers are slightly higher on both bars here, but what I would say we see here is that the gender gap is persistent across the Nordics. We find it in all the countries. So there's not a big difference between the countries here.
But there are some differences when it comes to the age brackets in all of the Nordic countries. We definitely see that the younger generation, young adults, is leading, right? But it's quite, especially Sweden and Norway, where the millennial generation has really embraced crypto and has gone in and tried to test, invest a bit, and increase the knowledge. While it's quite stable when it comes to 30 to 49 years old, but what we saw, for instance, in Denmark, right, was that the younger generation was not actually that invested into crypto, only 80%, while it was actually 30 to 39 or 30 to 49 who had invested in crypto in Denmark. So a large share of the population of the kind of younger adults who had then invested into crypto in Denmark compared to the millennial generation. But for the other Nordic countries, it's definitely the millennial generation leading, while the 50 plus years is quite stable, I would say.
Yes. And in terms of when people have bought their first cryptocurrencies, the pattern is also similar among the Nordic countries. You see also that Denmark slightly stands out there with a little bit higher percentage buying through the Corona years, but also in general, we see that when people have bought cryptocurrencies is equal across the Nordics. And to round this Nordic comparison off, we can look at the use of exchanges or brokerages for buying cryptocurrencies. And there we actually find some differences in the Nordic countries. What we see is that Norwegians and Finns, they are more likely to use local exchanges. All the countries, crypto owners in all the countries use international exchanges a lot, but the Danish use them the most. And we see that the Swedish are those using exchange traded products by buying crypto exposure through those traded products more than in the other Nordics. So here we actually have some differences. And with that, I think we should end our presentation here. The key findings from the Nordic crypto ownership study: 1.5 million Nordic crypto owners. You can see the distribution among countries here. Crypto reached mainstream during COVID. There's a significant age gap in crypto ownership. Young people own crypto more than old people. There's also a significant gender gap. Men are more likely to own crypto than women. And a lot of people are positive towards crypto. 22% of the adult population in the Nordics currently state that they plan to buy crypto within the next 10 years.
Thank you very much, Anders and Mats, for a great presentation and interesting findings. And we will discuss them together with the panel. I just have two questions for you guys. The first one is, when you prepared this survey and you had the Norwegian findings from the earlier years before, and compare it to what you have found now, are there any surprises, or is it in line with your expectations? Mats?
Yeah, so I think they're very much kind of in line with expectations, and it's always good, I guess, to have those expectations confirmed in a survey like this. But obviously, it's interesting to see that it's really the millennial generation now. You know, they're now investing more and more into crypto. It's quite a large increase. Well, about 30, there's actually a small decrease. So I think that's quite interesting to see. And other than that, I would say it's quite in line with expectations. It's always good also to see that, you know, the number of people actually reporting their taxes is good, but it's quite it's still quite a low amount, right, in terms of how many people actually own crypto.
I also have a question to you, Anders, regarding the number of people that you have asked and the representativity of the results. And is it correct to say that if you look at the trends on a Nordic level, then we have 4,000 people? When we look at each country, we have 1,000 people. And when we look into the different, for instance, exchanges or different type of investment, maybe we should be a little unsure of taking too much, giving too much meaning into the small numbers?
Yeah, we have to be very clear which numbers we are talking about here, because the overall numbers in terms of the ownership percentage, crypto ownership rates, number of people that own cryptocurrencies, the gender gaps, and so on, those are, I would say, very good estimates, and the error margin for those are small. What is correct is that if something, we have asked slightly above 1,000 people, about 100 of those own cryptocurrencies, and let's say there is something that's consistently 5 in 100 does in the cryptocurrency group. Of course, when we then just ask 100 people, that won't necessarily turn out to be 5% in our study of the crypto owners. There we have a relatively bigger error margin. It still, they will never become 20%, but they can become 1 or 2% from time to time. And the example is even more extreme if you have 1 in 100. If you meet that person, then you will have the 1%. You are also quite likely to not meet it, so it will be 0%. So when we drill deep down into the numbers, then it is sensible to be a bit cautious in interpreting the results. But the higher-arching numbers, I think there's a very good reason to trust quite hardly.
Thank you, Anders. And now we will invite our guests for a panel discussion. Rory, you could just add all the people that we have invited. And we firstly have a quick round just presenting who the people are. Maybe we could start with you, Sophia. The focus and your name.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for arranging this, Morten, EY and Kaupr. It's super important. And yeah, my name is Sophia Adampour, maybe more known for opening up the first physical NFT gallery back in 2021. As of now, I'm working more with strategy within the Web3 space as well, working with tokenization of solar energy and media content, which is also NFT related, of course. And I'm excited for our panel as well. Thanks.
Then we can continue with Stig.
All right. Hello. Thank you, first of all, for having this survey and this event. Very interesting to see the numbers for the Nordics and also Norway. So yeah, very valuable and looking forward to the discussions. I'm CEO of MBX, and yeah, I've been that since the start for 6 years. And MBX is a Norwegian crypto service provider. So we're both cryptocurrency exchange, custodian, crypto compliance as a service, credit card issuer, and yeah, we also run staking. So we're trying to cover most of the spectrum within the crypto as a service.
And then we can continue with other peoples in the panel. Torkel? Who are you and what do you represent? Yeah, I think you are, the sound is off.
Classic issue. Well, thank you. Great to be here. I'm Torkel. I'm the co-founder of Bare Bitcoin. So Bare Bitcoin, it's just Bitcoin in Norwegian. We're a Bitcoin-only brokerage. Decided to focus on what we mean is the most meaningful and an exciting asset. Obviously great to see a flight to quality, so to speak, in these numbers where more people report having Bitcoin than before. So that's exciting. Yes, excited to be here.
Then we go to Nikolai.
Hey, happy to be invited. I'm a product manager on digital assets in DNB, largest bank in Norway. And yeah, always exciting to see the updated numbers. So looking forward to the discussions.
And then it's your time, Torbjørn.
Yes, my name is Torbjørn Bull Jensen. I'm the CEO of K33. Anders has already presented our services, like doing brokerage, investment services, and research. And way back, you can all thank me for the time series, because I was the one who started the ownership study first for Norway.
Thank you. That was the introduction. And then we will have some debates where we will, in the beginning, focus on the Norwegian results, and so that everybody has some input into the discussion. And later on, we will focus more on the Nordic results. So, but the first question for all of you guys is, what is standing out from the Norwegian findings in your view? Maybe we could start with you, Torkel.
Yes, well, as I briefly mentioned in the intro here, I think a flight to quality is really a theme here. So one thing is of course the Bitcoin ownership significantly rising, but also if you look further down in the list of crypto assets. So for example, we saw that Solana overtook XRP, and some other movements in that list. I think that is also that's a very healthy development. I think things like XRP, and I think things like ADA and like several other crypto assets in the top 10 has no business being in that list. And I think it's a good market development to see that people are seemingly more focused on quality in crypto assets. And I obviously think Bitcoin is the leader there. Something I would be interested in seeing more of in the coming years is also seeing if this flight to quality would be visible in other areas. So currently NFTs on Bitcoin is seeing a really big development, and also like we sort of see the same movement early innings on DeFi in Bitcoin. So for next year, I would be very excited to see if we could see any movements there of NFTs and DeFi moving over to Bitcoin.
Let's also hear from you then, Stig. What is your main takeout from the Norwegian findings in the beginning?
Yeah, so I actually just quickly kind of compared a bit to the numbers of basically our users, so our data. And one of the interesting things that I see is that, for instance, that in the survey, it's the young generation that is the kind of where the numbers are actually when it comes to volume. But actually, when I kind of compare on our exchange, that is actually the age group, of course, between 18 to 25, is that group that has basically less kind of volume in terms of value of kroners. Probably because they don't have that much. But if you compare to, it's actually the group between 30 to 40 and 40 to 50 that is kind of the big spenders, even though I assume the numbers are smaller. So it probably is a bit to what is actually available wealth to invest in. So, but of course, when that younger generation gets more wealth to spend, it's going to be interesting to see how if they continue to invest in the same way.
Then we can continue with you, Sophia. What is your main take-up from the survey related to the Norwegian findings? Sophia, we can't hear you.
My apologies. Yeah, I mean, as Mats also mentioned, the numbers aren't that surprising. They're similar to other bull runs once they've started, but this is also the beginning one. Then it's still sad to see that there hasn't been a huge difference when it comes to the age gender gap, and when it comes to demographics, it would be more interesting. Personally, I would find it more interesting to see what people are investing in this as well. We know that they're highly educated and have a higher income, which also reflects the traditional financial market ownership as well. But when it comes to the whole idea of decentralization and democratization of the assets that we're representing in the space, it will be interesting to see the closer demographics of if there's an immigrant background involved, or what they're using the assets to as well, or if it's just for investments purposes.
Nikolai, the word is yours. What do you want to comment on your focused, what your take-up is, or comment on anybody else in the panel? That is up to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the first thing I noticed was that the trend that Norwegian investors are moving or are continuing to move over to Norwegian exchanges. That's a trend that we started to see last year, but it has strengthened this year. So that's very interesting to see that they prefer the Norwegian exchanges. I think the big new thing that I saw this year was that the people are starting to invest in ETFs and ETPs. And that's something that I've seen. I have the numbers from DNB related to how many of our customers have invested in the ETFs that we have listed that tracks the Bitcoin price. And yeah, I can say that the interest is very high. So the amount that our customers have invested in ETFs tracking Bitcoin is very high compared to other ETFs. And I would like to ask the panel what they think the future will be when you compare sort of spot investing in crypto versus investing through ETFs or ETPs. What do you think the difference there will be? Because the way I see it, I think that most people that are investing in crypto today are interested in just exposure to the price. And you can argue that investing in ETFs and ETPs is a simpler way to invest. But I think the stronger argument is that at least now the reporting tax on ETFs or ETPs is much simpler than reporting tax on crypto. So there are some arguments why investors would prefer those. And I'm interested to hear if people think that ETFs and ETPs will continue to grow, or if people will continue to invest in spot, even if they don't just want the exposure.
We will start to focus a little more on the different topics after we have had the first round. So the word is now for you, Torbjørn. Whether you want to follow up some of the base or give us your main impression?
Yeah, I think for the Norwegian numbers, we're still on trend, right? It continues the past pattern. To me, the most interesting is the Nordic comparisons, because that really highlights how differences in tax rules
for instance, in Sweden being extremely favorable for DTPs, have major impacts on how the industry evolves. Also differences in how regulators treat the sector. It's not a surprise to me to see that Norway has a higher ownership rate and more active market, because in Norway, the Norwegian FSA actually pushed the banks to start accepting crypto companies when they had the policy of generally blocking it. Whereas in Sweden, the push has been very much the other way around. The former vice chair kind of worked actively to try to stop crypto, both in Sweden and on EU level. And we know that several of the regulated Swedish exchanges can't get a Swedish bank account. They can't even deal in Swedish kroner, which is a local currency. And then lastly, of course, seeing then Denmark having a lot of volume international exchanges, kind of having euro or Danish kroner, which is a fixed exchange rate with euro, makes it kind of less of a surprise that you would see that. Maybe Finland was a little bit of surprise to me. I would have thought they would have also a larger share of international exchanges due to euro being the currency.
Sorry, I unmuted myself, but now we can also hear from Jakob. Of course, you're not tightly into the Norwegian market, but you can maybe look at it from the outside. And then what is your impression? Maybe I've seen also the results from the earlier years. And what is your findings? You're muted. Sorry.
I just wanted to be part of it, right? So, so I think the interesting question that Nikolai and Torbjørn is raising is the different infrastructure you have in the different countries, and in my opinion, and what we have seen, it's quite been financial gains, or it's been due to interesting to the technologies that have been driving the investments. And I think with more structured product and easier way to do it, it would be a different brackets that you're looking into to blockchain from an investment perspective. I mean, I got my savings, I got a budget. I would like a good financial gain, but I can't take the chance. And now when you get ETFs and I can see the asset class over the 10 years actually get a good return, I can actually look at this as an asset class where I can invest a little bit more long-term, but that need to be easy, right? In Denmark, there's an arbitrage tax situation, which does make it favorable to invest if you want to look at it as a long-term investment. So I think, and again, as I highlighted to begin with, this report gives really good insight on how we can learn across the regions. And the Danes, of course, need to learn a lot about the the Norwegian approach towards it. So I think there's more why are people actually investing, and I think it's been maybe driven a little bit by hype. And I think now it's going with Mika and other initiatives going a little bit more into actually a structured product or something you can see yourself investing in as an average consumer.
It was interesting that you said, Nikolai, that you had a rather high, much people then investing in the ETFs, because the numbers are lower than, of course, in Sweden, which is where there is an industry on this. And Torkel, you have some thoughts about this. When should you then invest in an indirect product or buying the real thing? You're maybe a proponent for the real thing.
Well, that's an astute guess, Morten. I think buying an ETF is more like buying a Mickey Mouse version of Bitcoin, you know. So I think this highlights really well the power of tax laws and, in a way, what a weapon tax laws can be. So I won't speak for anyone else here, but I'm into Bitcoin because I'm skeptical towards the state. I'm in Bitcoin because I want to limit the power of the state. And if I was a state and I wanted to try and inhibit Bitcoin, I would totally use tax laws and the tax regulations as a weapon. And we see how it's obviously hard to say, and probably Anders and Mads can have thoughts on this as well. But I would say that a really large percent of the change between the Nordic countries is related to how Norway has more favorable tax laws when holding spot Bitcoin yourself. So I think the Norwegian and Nordic service providers in some ways have an obligation, like a moral duty, to try and help our users to take self-custody of their crypto assets, of their Bitcoin. This is really at the core of the value proposition of owning something like Bitcoin. I think we also try and, of course, not force our users to take self-custody, but try and help and assist them, and maybe even try and nudge them into taking self-custody. We get a lot of inbound traffic to us where people ask how can I do this? This is scary. This is difficult. I want assistance in doing this. We try and help out in different ways there. But I think that's really something we as an industry should try and be mindful about. That self-custody is at the core here, and owning spot Bitcoin in self-custody is quantitatively different than owning an ETF.
Next one is Mads.
Yes, thank you, Morten. So yeah, definitely interesting points there. I think one thing to note, right, is that most of the crypto that people invest in are not financial instruments, right? And so they're just perceived as ordinary assets that needs to be reflected into the tax return rather than financial instruments, stocks, funds, and stuff like that, which might be easier to report and have sort of a different rule set, right? And I also wanted to comment a bit on what Torbjørn said about the financial authorities, because what we have seen with our clients who are kind of across the Nordics is that many of them have quite easily been able to register with the financial authorities in both Sweden and Denmark when it comes to the VASP registration for AML purposes, so virtual asset service providers, right, for AML purposes, which is kind of the current regulatory environment. While they have been struggling to register in Norway because the FSA has been a bit stricter when it comes to the AML policies. Now that might be obviously easier with markets in crypto assets regulation coming into play now from the EU during 2024, and which is also now on hearing in Norway. Because then obviously it will be much easier with let's say harmonized rules and hopefully harmonized interpretation of the rules as well across the EEA EU, and I think kind of the regulatory bit is quite important in order to kind of gain some, let's say, trust among the more institutional players, among governments towards this particular sector.
Then to you, Sophia, you, for instance, wanted to comment on Torkel, but you're free to say what you want.
Thanks. No, it was just a quick comment to Torkel, as I initially in the introduction mentioned that the demographics of this is important, is because we've seen why people originally want to invest in assets such as only Bitcoin. But it seems with the increase of the ETF interest that it's more like an investment opportunity rather than the democratization tool that many of us, that was the reason that many of us got engaged in the space in the initially. So yeah, that was the quick comment. So in order to get the politicians that we really need to show more interest in this area, it needs to be a bit more politicized and needs to have other questions asked as well when it's towards who's using this and what arguments are to use the assets as well, rather than just an investment object.
The next one is Stig, and I think that we also then can open up for commenting on the Nordic and the comparable results, so that we are floating into an integrated discussion. So the first one now is Stig.
Yeah, so it's a follow-up comment on the ETF and kind of what I believe for the future there. I think there's three factors there, still quite strong kind of drivers for why ETFs is going to be basically it's going to be an inflow and an increased buy of that product, and that's one is investors are lazy. So if they're already on a platform where they have all the other asset class and the only kind of exposure for crypto asset they can get is through an ETF, they will buy that instead of onboarding with a different exchange. The other is you have MiCA coming that can change this, basically regulating crypto assets as an asset class, such that financial institutions know how they can basically relate to them, and you may see that you have native crypto assets on these trading platforms, for instance Nordnet in Norway, but that will take time. And even though you have an asset class available on the platform, it's still a different asset class, meaning that a lot of funds and family offices actually need to update the mandate for investment guidelines. So even though it's available, they're maybe not actually allowed to invest in it because they only have guidelines that such that they can buy products that is on a regulated stock exchange, for instance. So you have these kind of three factors that will, the first, laziness, and the other is kind of the things that will slow the process of the change down.
Then the word is yours, Torbjørn. Maybe you wanted to comment on some that had the word a couple of minutes ago, but go on.
Yeah, no, it's just a super quick comment on what Mats said, that they've seen that it's been easy to get the, call it WASP registration with the different Nordic FSAs. And the challenge hasn't been for crypto companies to get the registration. I mean, we've been an owner and operator of a local retail exchange in both Sweden and in Norway. And I think it's fair assessment that the Norwegian FSA has been tougher and more thorough, if you like. The challenge has been in getting banking relations. So, and this is where the political part of it is really important. It's not like the Swedish FSA said that banks cannot have crypto companies. But when you have the vice chair over and over in media, really kind of slaughtering the crypto industry, and you have a Swedish banking industry that's been hit with super heavy fines for money laundering, not related to crypto, those banks are on a heavy kind of de-risking path. And it's actually moving so far in Sweden that in Trio, the exchange we owned at the time, we at a point we lost the ability to use bank ID for authentication. There's no money laundering risk for the bank that has to have the certificate for you to have bank ID, but they didn't, like they had a policy of not serving a crypto company. So there you had a Swedish approved by the Swedish FSA as a Finansiellt Institut company trying to use bank ID as a part of their onboarding procedures, in addition to actually having passport scans when you were doing withdrawals, and as an extra measure for security. And they lost the ability to use bank ID because of the de-risking from the banks. There's no laws forbidding banks to offer this, but call it the political climate has real business impact. And there, I think the Norwegian FSA did a very important move when the AML rules were updated so that you had registrations for crypto companies, and they actively stepped out and said, we expect the banks to stop the practice of just denying on a general basis and actually do a proper risk assessment.
Maybe we could hear then from you, Jakob, about the Nordic findings, and maybe also this discussion or the hypothesis that the difference in taxes, difference in regulation, rules and implementation, that influences the different adoptions in the different countries. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I think it's quite clear because you can see it's more or less the same ratio on a gender gap. It's the same age groups that are investing. So I think it's showcasing it's the same consumer group who are looking into crypto as investing. I think it was quite interesting to see the comparison with the Norwegian report compared to shares. So I think it's kind of showing it's the same users and same profiles that's looking into investing, but then you can see the difference in the different market, which is correlating to how proactive the governments are and what the sentiment is in the media. And I think that's where it's really interesting to see what Norway have done versus Denmark, where the media picture is not that good. It's about financial gain of bad actors. So what I find really interesting here is that I find that the adoption that happened during COVID was maybe people had extra time, and when looking at the different tokens that have been investing into, it was more a broader aspect. Now you see it's moving towards Bitcoin, Ethereum, which for me it's a little bit more stable market to go into. So I'm really hoping that with having these reports, we can now basically showcase what they actually did in Norway makes a ton of sense, right? It's proactive, it's engaging with the industry. Let's do that in Denmark, let's do that in Sweden. I really hope, and what we are seeing, there's, again, with the local exchanges, there's extremely high quality in the Nordic. So I think the combination of the high quality of the exchanges that we have in the Nordic and the proactiveness we're seeing in Norway and other countries with regulators, if we can match that throughout the region, I think we'll see even higher prediction numbers towards adoption going forward. I still think there's a lot of uncovered potential here, taking regulation and good, easy user interface into perspective.
Mats, maybe you have some comments related to the Nordic findings and the difference between the countries.
Yes, absolutely. So this week, right, we have presented the results for each Nordic country, and we've seen differences kind of in the angles and in the exposure for each country. So especially Sweden, there was quite a few articles, and with the particular focus on the Swedish millennial generation leading, right, the crypto interest in Sweden, which I guess is not really surprising. Well, in Finland, the focus was more on the 2034 angle, that we estimated that more than 1 million Finns will potentially own crypto in 2024. So we'll see a significant increase in the number of people in Finland owning crypto, and that was really highlighted in Finland as kind of a surprising element. But they might then forget that there might be with more, I guess, institutional investors and corporates coming into the space, they might then have a development in terms of infrastructure. And so if you have infrastructure, there might be then solutions where people don't really understand necessarily that they actually use crypto, and that might also then obviously lead to an increase in at least the adoption rate of crypto in general.
You want to comment on that, Stig, or on the differences regarding regulation and follow up on the authorities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, because actually one of the things that I would say that actually Swedish authorities may have a higher or have a better reason of being skeptical than, for instance, Norwegian regulators, and that is if you're actually looking historically on transactions from Swedes buying crypto and using the services, you can see that actually over 10% of all the transactions went to darknet market or the Fluxant market, which is the Scandinavian drug market. And if you compare that with the Norwegian brokers and exchanges, you don't see that at all. So it's like it's actually the Norwegian service providers have been clean from the start, while the Swedes actually have quite a shady, to be honest, history. But that was also related to the tools that they actually had available for them. They were early on in offering these services. But that may be a reason why they are more skeptical.
Maybe we should look a little into the difference regarding the exchanges between the different countries, and maybe not for each exchange, but maybe the difference between the local and the international exchanges. And Nikolai, what is your view about that difference between the countries?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask the panel, as we're represented here with at least 3 Norwegian exchanges. So I wanted to ask the panel, why do you guys think that Norwegians prefer Norwegian exchanges compared to international exchanges? And also, why do you think that the difference is larger in Norway compared to the other Nordic countries?
Of course, then I have to give the word to those exchanges. So we will start with Torkel. You are muted, Torkel. You are muted.
The eternal struggle of being muted. I think there's one word that kind of accurately describes this issue, and that's trust. And then trust can be viewed on through a lens with like several different perspectives. I think when it comes to selling Bitcoin, the one thing that our clients are really worried about is sending us their Bitcoin, selling the Bitcoin, having no Bitcoin, and then being stuck with not receiving Norwegian kroner on the other end. You know, they're really afraid of going to an international exchange, getting rid of all their coins, and then the bank stopping the transaction. That's something we see being brought up again and again. They really want reassurances before sending us Bitcoin that our transaction won't be stopped. And that's obviously a very big difference when doing a domestic transfer to a Norwegian entity reporting to the FSA versus going to a Maldives-based non-registered exchange. Then when it comes to the differences between the Nordics, again, I just really want to highlight tax laws. If you're if you're investing in spot Bitcoin in Sweden, you're not making a sound financial decision per se. You're most likely driven by what's more of an ideological reason. Like the sound financial decision in Sweden is to invest through your stock brokerage, and that's again, that's sad. The Swedes should get their shit together, but that's just the way it is, and it really highlights the power of tax laws in influencing how people invest.
I just wanted to give you guys some additional information and also to the viewers, because we have invited two international exchanges, and we thought that we already had one, but there's a meeting in Sweden today with the financial authorities regarding MiCA. So that is one reason why someone couldn't be able to participate here. But let's hear from you, Stig, regarding the difference between the local and the international exchange regarding market size.
Yeah, so I would say it's basically the same kind of just what Torkel said. It's all about trust, both for retail and companies. They rather trust a Norwegian company than any company at wherever you don't even know where their office is. And particularly it's on ramp, off ramp. We see that also a lot of the companies and retail are worried about actually the bank stopping the transaction. So for many, we basically provide a source of funds report where it describes for the bank where the funds basically are from. But we also see actually from Sweden that we have Swedes coming in through us. Of course, they struggle receiving funds if they were basically from an international exchange. The Swedish bank stops it. But if they come through us, they receive it. So it's same kind of issue there actually in Sweden.
Regarding the fight between the Norwegian exchanges and the international ones, of course, you will have to hear from you, Torbjørn, because you have also opened a catfight between the exchanges within the Norway market, or at least we in Kaupr, we have called it that. And what is your view about the differences between how people view the exchanges in the Nordic framing?
I think there's a lot of historic path dependencies here. If you take Denmark, they had Coinify, which had a very international focus, and for a long time was a very successful exchange service internationally. In Sweden, Safello was very early on. They rose venture capital. They built a very user-friendly widget that was simple to use internationally. They had an international focus, and then suddenly, but with a local optimization. For instance, you could use Norwegian bank ID and very quickly buy. But then with the AML rules, the Norwegian FSA sent a cease and desist to those running with the Safello widget, and suddenly they were forced back into the Swedish market again. In Norway, we had perhaps the first still operational broker in the world in Bitmynt, quickly followed by both JustCoin, but also Bitcoins Norway. And Bitcoins Norway was on an extremely fast-growing trajectory when they were hit by a massive software issue and terrible communication, and spectacularly went down. So I think which players we have, which marketing they've been able to establish. The fact that Firi, for instance, got Schibsted as an investor, and a lot of the investment was credits for marketing, meaning that they had an ability to plaster public space, especially during the COVID hype with communication. Of course, that captured a lot of the long tail of smaller users that are new. I think if we had looked at the volume data, the international would by far be dominant, because there are no real reason to really trust the Norwegian or local exchanges more. Apart from when it comes to on-ramp and off-ramp, it's much higher probability that you'll have a pain-free transfer of your funds to your bank, for instance, in Norway, if it comes from a Norwegian bank. Apart from that, there are other larger, better run, cheaper exchanges than any of the local ones that can be more difficult to use. They may not be in Norwegian, or they may not have support in Norwegian, which might be things you appreciate. But I think on-ramp and off-ramp, and then historic path dependency are the main explanatory reasons. And I think moving forward, we will see more competition where this landscape changes more, where international exchanges will become more able to service local currencies. And with Mika, they can also have web pages in Norwegian if they find that market to be attractive enough, but also vice versa. Norwegian players can more easily move out.
If we now take a more of a helicopter view and look at the future, how can we get the whole space as a total industry to gain more shares, to get more people on board? Where are the hurdles for the next billion users, as a lot of people are talking about? And when we have had this webinars, we started with only men on Monday on Sweden. Then we continued on Tuesday with, in addition to Anders and Mats, which obviously are men, we only had women guests, and we had a really fun and interesting discussion. And yesterday in Finland, again, only men. We invited women, but there was no yes. And also today we have a gender issue in this panel. So what can we do about this? And not only towards the end user, but also as an industry. What do you think about that, Sophia?
I mean, that's the reason I said yes to be a part of this panel, is just for the representation. In case there's anyone watching this, it has a lot to say. I've been in some talks with some of the biggest exchanges here in Norway, trying to explain how it's not a hidden fact that females are more risk averse, but there is a 3x potential here. From only 5% female Norwegian owners compared to 14% male owners. So just doing some small tweaks, and I want to give a shout out to Torkel and Bare Bitcoin. It's obvious that they've been using a female UX and UI designer. You can just see it on the platform. You don't have to do that much to actually gain that acknowledgement and traction, and of course representation, which is, it's always scary to sit along with these big boys who has great knowledge in the space, but just being here and having the voice heard as well, I believe that's has a lot to say as well. So yeah, please guys, try to pick some other colors than blue and black and gray. And I believe that will also just some strategy and marketing parts around that as well will do a lot. So you can just see at the traditional space, such as Kron, which eventually ended up being bought for over 400 million NOK at some point, because they were aiming for female investors. So the potential here is huge. And as always, I'm always down to have a chat, because we have launched kryptokvinner.no to actually get a bigger traction around the female investors in the space and users. And this has to be done in the earliest stage, or we will see the same results as in the traditional space, or as just in styrer. The board advisory now in Norway requires to have at least 40% women, or you will have a financial punishment. Experience that. So we don't want to punish people for not being diverse enough. So of course it has to, and we have to start it early enough. So yeah, thanks.
So it's really, really great that you have started this initiative with kryptokvinner, Sophia. And we also have an initiative in Denmark, Jakob. And you had an event a couple of weeks ago. Could you just tell us a little about what you did and what is the experience so far?
Well, of course, I think before going to the event in itself. I think it's my background has been as a CFO and an auditor in tech companies for 15 plus years. And I think every time a new technology comes out, it's often people with a lot of risk appetite that goes into it. I worked for free for many years to be able to be in this industry. And I think that that's a risk appetite that often tend to be meant doing, I would say, stupid things, taking a big bet on something. And what we're seeing right now in our ecosystem is now when it's more established, you have a lot more people moving into it, and you have a lot of females coming in. And I think we're in a situation where just because we have been here for a longer time, we're the one invited for the different opportunities to speak or to engage. And I think that's a trend we just need to change. So that's why we Nordic Blockchain initiated a lot of females in blockchain, where we basically said, let's put them in front. And I must admit, some of the first dialogue, they were like, am I the right profile? Shouldn't we have someone who had been here for a long time with a title? Like, they are even more knowledgeable than a lot of us sitting around the table. So I think it's about just saying, okay, it's not about how long time you've been in the industry. It's not your title, but it's basically just getting it in front. And I think like Sophia with Emily, there's a lot of people doing a lot of really good things. So what we did in Nordic Blockchain was just having this event that was fully run by we got both members and team members. That's of course a female. They were just running it by themselves. They were the one doing it. And obviously the question was, Jakob, do you want to present? That was just in our nature that I should present initially, right? Which was just, we kind of laughed at it afterwards, right? But it's just saying, okay, there's a lot of females in the industry. Let's make sure they just get the opportunity to talk and not me or someone else on the behalf. And I think we're moving in the right direction. But I think as with any new technology, it takes some time to have a broader audience. But I think that's happening right now, at least what we can see.
Focusing on increased adoption, there can of course be several barriers to entry. Torkel, what are your views about the secret sauce, or whatever you could suggest?
Well, first of all, thanks for the shout out, Sophia. And yes, we do have a female designer, and I also believe that the lead UX designer of Feeding is also female. So I guess there's several success stories in Norway with a more female inclusive design aspect. Well, when it comes to commenting on the adoption part, I think in some ways the main driver of adoption is not with us in the room right now, and is way above our sphere of influence. I think long term the main force driving adoption is actually the central bank and the central bank's mismanagement of our current monetary system. If the central bank in Norway, and if the central bank, especially in the US, obviously way more important than the one in Norway, if the central banks continue to mismanage their monetary policies, that will drive adoption of Bitcoin and maybe other crypto assets as well. If the central banks start to do a more prudent monetary policy, that might actually hinder Bitcoin's adoption. I don't think the central bank will be able to do a more prudent policy. But my point here, just to emphasize that I think in some ways driving adoption is above our heads. In Bitcoin, I think price drives adoption, not the other way necessarily. We sadly see that people tend to overinvest at the top and panic sell the bottom. And that's because actually adoption is a lagging indicator when compared to price, which is a leading indicator. So that's also a commentary. I think making money in Bitcoin and making money in crypto is not that hard. Not that hard. You just need to buy and then don't sell for like 5-10 years. But we see that people do sell. They sell after 1 year, after 2 years, while being heavily down. We see that especially with female investors in this most recent survey being more prone to selling at the bottom, and that's also a thing I hope that we as an industry can focus on, helping our users realize that you just need to don't sell, just hold this thing for 5 years and you will be good.
Then the next one is Nikolai regarding barriers to entry, regarding adoption.
Yeah, I think it's easy when you work in the industry to become a bit blind on the major things we need to address to drive adoption. I think when you work in the industry, it's easy to start thinking that people know the general arguments for why you should invest in crypto. But after stepping outside a bit and working in a bank, it's become quite clear to me that a lot of people, I would say probably the majority of people, they don't really see the arguments for why it is even interesting to invest in crypto. They don't see the potential in the technology. Hear a lot of people thinking it's a scam, it's going to zero, it's silly, it doesn't have any intrinsic value, it doesn't have any use cases, and so on. So I think it's worth mentioning that if we're talking about sort of addressing the public, we really need to continue to address the sort of main arguments and not stop. Even though we've said it for many years, there's still a lot of people who don't know about the sort of main arguments for why crypto is interesting. They don't know the possibility and the use cases that the technology offers us. So at least for the general public, that's something to keep in mind. There's still some education that needs to be done.
Oh, you're on mute.
The word now is yours, Torbjørn.
Thanks. No, I want to build on also what Nikolai is saying, but also pulling it back to this gender gap. I think the gender gap is completely the wrong lens. I think the gap that worries me is the personality gap. And the truth is that the majority of people active in this industry are gamblers who are seeking to get rich quick. If we try to make a more so-called female-friendly design to get women into the same idiotic behavior of get rich quick, that would be a loss for society. I think really what we have to do, especially those of us who know of the capabilities of this industry, is to educate, educate, and educate. And that will also over time help bridge the gender gap as we are able to demonstrate real use cases for broader parts of society. I've had several meetings with Røde Kors, both domestically and internationally, that are looking at multiple ways of using cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, for instance, both to get money to the front where banking rails are inefficient, also to use it in relation to fundraising events. In those meetings, the gender balance is a larger female participation than men. If we can get society to really focus on the use cases and actual use cases and not just this hype and excuse for number go up, we will over time see a broadening of who gets in. But let's not focus too much on let's get women in, let's get women in, let's get women. No, let's get education out about the use cases. And let's be honest about how much gambling there is. Let's be honest about the fact that from time to time, scams has been the main drivers of the price. People investing in one coin and other scams has been major price drivers historically. And we see, like Stig has seen it, we have seen it, I bet Torkel has seen it, everyone who's been running an exchange, see the volume of new clients coming in, wanting to buy Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies to invest in a scam. And some of them are, also there's this age gap, some of them are elder women. And I'm happy to stop them and not have them as a part of the industry because they're about to get scammed. Let's focus on education and then let women and men, risk takers or conservative people, regardless of their sex, learn so they can find their angle into the industry.
Obviously, there are some really interesting discussions going on, and we have to give Sophia the word on this one.
First of all, I totally agree with Torbjørn as well. But as we're going to be honest with ourselves that much of this is about gambling, we have to be honest with ourselves that there's not a lot of financial gain in knowledge sharing. We've been doing this since 2021. But there's no money in it unless you make it like a paying course that is again more directed towards the male audience, which are into trading as well. But of course, I mean, we have a TV show on NRK. You can see at some point my sister have a SafeMoon sticker on her computer, which is a total scam, 100%. But she ended up being in this space because of those opportunities. So she is an integrated participant. So not undermining females' willingness to like take a part of that gambling game as well, just being also aware that there is a high volatility and high risk, and that if you don't go into those traditional assets, you will most likely lose it all, which I mean, one shouldn't undermine that part as well. So of course the knowledge part is important, but just including them in all aspects of the industry, including that risk part as well. Yeah.
We would like to try to close the session around 1.5 hours so that we keep until the expectations that people have. But we have two ending comments. One from Mads regarding this barriers to entry.
Yes, thank you, Morten. I definitely agree with Torbjørn and Sophia on the knowledge gap, but we can't also forget how important it is for enterprises to actually build solutions in order to actually both gain knowledge and gain, let's say, trust around the technology itself. We see that for AI adoption in corporates as well. It's lack of talent and skills, and it's regulatory concerns which really drives or is the main barriers to AI adoption within corporates. And I think that might resonate also within blockchain and crypto for enterprises. That is kind of a lack of knowledge, and it's regulatory concerns. Now with MiCA, let's hope that at least the regulatory bit is at least moving, right? And on the knowledge bit, I really think that with the millennials now driving this force and at least increasing knowledge, and they enter then into the work life, that might also change in the future.
Just a last question to you, Anders, because we have 4 countries, we have a Nordic overview, we have a lot of topics to discuss, and do you have any type of inspiration to go on for another survey for the next year and maybe increase it even on the topic side? What are your expectations or thoughts about the future here? You are muted. You are muted.
Definitely. We find the current survey and the results, of course, and the results are the important part here, very interesting. And even though the results are not that surprising, they shed proper light and give evidence of how many own cryptocurrencies, who they are, and so on. And then I've noted a lot of the comments here today. It will be interesting to, in the future, drill down even more into what people use crypto for and what they plan to use crypto for. We, of course, have an indication based on the numbers so far, and if we interpret them objectively, most in the Nordics own crypto as an investment currently. But for starting from next year, we should possibly start asking more questions about that to possibly see the development that will be in that regard. So definitely scope for introducing more questions and just prolonging the timeline in the coming years.
We then want to close up this event, and thank you very much both for the speakers and for all the guests to give their interesting comments on both the findings and also the way going forward. We have another stream starting in about 26 minutes, and that's about tax. We have Skatteetaten, the Norwegian tax authority, and maybe then we will have some answers on something that people have said here about buy Bitcoin and stay. Then you don't have that problem with your skattemelding, perhaps, or are there other problems related to the skattemelding? Please take a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and join us at 11 o'clock. And thank you very much for this participation, both to the speakers and to the viewers.